if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicaid, beat it to death.
That was
Isn't that
freaking
not awesome?
priceless. I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjakovich. And we are Unapologetically Outspoken. Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. And it is a happy Friday indeed, at least for Trump supporters. So, Stephanie, since I'm 6 hours ahead of you here in Europe and the debate wasn't until like 9 p.m. last night, and I was not going to wake up at 3 a.m. to watch it, I didn't see anything until I woke up this morning. But of course, I rightly assumed that it was going to be a complete shit show for Biden. And before I even saw anything about the debate itself, the first thing I saw when I woke up was a text from my mom where she was watching the debates, and she said, quote, "What's with Biden's eyes? They look like huge baubles. Then he looks down listening in his earbuds, and knowing the questions in advance before Trump does makes his answers as if they're memorized." And then in parentheses, she writes, "if that's possible. And as if he's reading from a cheat sheet," end quote. So like, no surprise there. We know the man is quite literally incapable of intelligently answering a question that he hasn't prepared for in advance. And apparently, even when he prepares, he still can't answer a question. So we obviously have a lot to unpack here, not only from what happened last night during the debates, but also the kind of shit show that occurred beforehand. So Stephanie, let's dive into this fucking clown show.
Okay, so before we get into the actual debate, which, oh my gosh, like I have so much to say. This was such a mind-blowing event. A lot of things I wasn't quite expecting. But before the debate even started, Republican Andy Ogles introduced the, quote, "No Juicing Joe Act." So I'm going to play a clip of this because it's freaking hilarious. And then we'll get into the debate.
The American people will tune in to watch a rigged debate with leftist hosts pretending to moderate. Biden's sham of a judicial witch hunt is as obvious to the American people as the amount of stimulants that Biden takes before his public appearances. Incoherent mutterings, lack of physical awareness, and wandering off demonstrate his cognitive decline. Ahead of tonight's debate, have no doubt his puppet masters will once again be administering a concoction of drugs to keep him awake, which is why I introduced the No Juicing Joe Act, which would require the White House to notify Congress and the American people when Biden takes anything for cognitive decline. America is the leader of the free world. We need a commander-in-chief who is capable of articulating a coherent sentence, aware of his surroundings, and can lead with strength. A president like Donald Trump. Tonight, the American people.
Okay, so I just thought that was hilarious, the No Juicing Joe Act. And then like right before the debate started, Don Jr. was like posting on TikTok saying how Biden was refusing Trump's proposal that they both take drug tests prior to the debate. And he made a really good point. He's like, imagine that, like a nuclear war could break out at any moment. And we have a president that's refusing to take a drug test. Like, it's unacceptable. And it's obvious he's being drugged. And it's like, I just think about this. And when I worked at Coke, I had to take a drug test. Like, I couldn't sell soda without taking a drug test. But Joe Biden can be in charge of the country and like not have to prove to the American public that he's drug free. And it's just like, you can't make this shit up. But I don't know, Tara, like on the debate stage, it didn't really seem like he was hopped up on stimulants.
Well, I'm sure they tried, because going back to this whole like drug test thing, when the issue came up, like for the last couple days, that's all anyone's been talking about. And, you know, the White House has just been kind of ignoring it. And I'm like, this is bullshit. Like you said, I had to take a drug test. How many drug tests have I taken throughout my life? Multiple. When I was in processing for the fire department, I had to take a drug test. After I got hired, I had to take a drug test. When I was going through the hiring process to become a cop, I had to take a drug test. Throughout my LAPD career, the department would do like random drug testing on employees at any given moment with no warning. So you couldn't even like prepare for it if you wanted to. I had to take a drug test with the Department of Motor Vehicles to qualify for my commercial driver's license so that I could drive a 6-horse trailer with LAPD. Like, companies all over the world require drug testing for employment. You had to take one as a sales rep, but the fucking president of the country, who is theoretically in charge of national security, and I use the word theoretically because we all know he isn't truly in charge of anything, but he's in the position that's supposed to be the most powerful and respected job in the country, and laughs off taking a drug test, and so does his administration. And then I was thinking, like, why wouldn't they want to prove everybody wrong and like show that he's clear-minded and sober, allegedly, because he's not. And quite honestly, like, I'm surprised they didn't just give him a fake drug test, like I'm sure they did with his COVID vaccines that I question were real, just to like shut everybody up. Because they have the capability to have done this and just like provided false results. Like, we're talking about the elites here that are literally capable of making people disappear and who like can then allegedly say it's suicide. And these are the same people who are in control of the biggest drug companies in the world and who, created the pandemic. Like, don't tell me they couldn't have just faked a drug test. But instead, they play it off with jokes. And like, I don't know if you saw this, but even Biden tried to joke and say that it was a right-wing conspiracy that he would even think of taking performance-enhancing drugs before the debate. And did you see his campaign website? Because they posted a link to a can of water for sale on his website and called it Dark Brandon's Secret Sauce. Like, how fucking stupid.
Oh my God. And they found cocaine at the White House. Like, and your son was a crackhead. Like, you shouldn't be joking about this. Like, it's just their whole like campaign team and everyone that works on his speeches, bunch of idiots. Like, they all should have been fired a long time ago. But getting into the actual debate, Trump did phenomenal. I thought he did phenomenal. He was calm. He gave clear answers. And I really feel like he spoke to the average American. And then you had Biden. I mean, he was so bad from the very beginning. Like, I couldn't understand much of what he said. Just like you said, your mom was texting you. My mom was texting me, and she's like, I'm not trying to be mean. I really don't know what he's saying. Like, I have no idea what he's talking about. And same with my daughter. Like, she was watching and she was trying to follow along, but all she could do was giggle and take screenshots of him looking like a complete idiot that just shit his pants or something. Like, it was horrible. And he kept getting off topic too, but not to help himself. Like, it just kept helping Trump. So there were numerous times where his eyes closed. And I mean, Tara, it looked like he was actually dozing off. And then the camera would quickly pan away from him. And what was the most surprising to me was it was Biden who was the one that kept getting his mic cut off. I mean, he lied so many times. I don't think Trump got his mic cut off once, or if he did, I didn't notice it, but I noticed it multiple times with Biden, and Biden kept lying. And once again, like, he started telling stories on things that had been debunked numerous times. And so at one point, Trump called him out on it and was like looking at the moderators like, are you going to call him out on this? Because even CNN had debunked the story that Biden kept saying. And my absolute favorite part of the debate was when Biden was mumbling and it was so bad. And the moderators like quickly turned it over to Trump for, rebuttal. And Trump said, quote, I don't know what he said there at the end. I don't think he knows what he said.
Oh my God, I know. Trump, honestly,
awesome.
He had incredible comebacks last night. And like, I want to play a clip of one of my favorites. They weren't talking. Biden just started rambling about Medicare.
Things we need to do: childcare, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicaid, beat it to death.
That was
Isn't
freaking
that awesome?
priceless. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
And then, like, at one point, Biden was the whole thing with the Trump trials came up, and Biden comments on Trump having sex with Stormy Daniels, and he tells Trump he has the moral of an alley cat, and Trump shoots back and he goes, "I did not have sex with a porn star." And, like, the fact that they're talking about this in a presidential debate is just so fucking ridiculous. But my favorite part was watching the expressions on Trump's face whenever Biden was talking. I mean, his facial expressions were so on point with, like, what the fuck are you even saying? What is coming out of your mouth? And if Trump hadn't uttered a word that entire debate, just his expressions alone would have been priceless.
Yeah, I was really impressed with how he kept his composure because I mean, I think everyone watching, like they were gasping at just how bad Biden was, you know? And he really like he could have gone for the jugular, but he didn't. Like he kept it very calm and didn't really attack Biden. So I was like impressed with Trump for that because he could go off the cuff a little bit. But yeah, like I took screenshots of Biden for our TikTok because that look, he like every time they would ask him a question, he looked like terrified. Like he didn't know where he was, he didn't know who was talking to him. And oh my God, Tara, at the end when they start arguing about golf, I was like, okay, this is like straight out of a movie. Like it's the scene from Grumpy Old Men, two old
Yeah.
guys joking about golf, you know? And I will say like Trump ended it well though because he's like, let's not be act like children. I was like, okay, that's good. Um but in all seriousness, the biggest thing that I was worried about with this debate is abortion because we know like that's pretty much the biggest issue with most of the female voters that don't want to vote for Trump. And you have Democrats that are constantly saying Trump wants to ban abortion. And so he was able to set the record straight once and for all, saying he will not do a federal ban. And he made it crystal clear that he wants the states to decide because they're the ones closest to the voter. And the voter obviously is going to have a lot more say in their state than at a federal level. And so I loved the way he articulated it. I think he made it crystal clear he's not doing a ban. But then you had Biden that is talking and rambling, and he flat out says that abortion should be allowed in the third trimester. And Trump called him out on it, saying states like Virginia want to allow 9-month abortions and even like letting the baby be born and then setting it aside and letting it die. And so, just the way it all unfolded, in my opinion, it made Trump sound like the reasonable one, and Biden sounded like a freaking lunatic extremist.
Yeah, and when Biden was asked about abortion, did you notice he just randomly started talking about migrant crime instead?
Yes. The guy, oh my gosh, all night he was doing that. And he actually, I don't know if that was the time where he brings up the 12-year-old girl that was murdered by an
Yes.
immigrant. And I mean,
Mhm.
he just opened the door wide open for Trump to talk about like how much our country has been hurt by Biden's open border. And, he brought up the murders, the drugs coming in, the human trafficking, and said how these migrants are taking over the healthcare system, the social security system, and every resource our country has. And I loved that he did that because Biden kept trying to say, oh, Trump wants to end social security and Medicare and Medicaid. And here Trump was saying, well, it's already being destroyed by these illegal migrants that are using all the resources. So I thought it all played out like actually really well when it came to that.
Yeah, and one of the lies, one of the many lies that Biden told last night was he claimed at one point that he's being endorsed by Border Patrol, which is clearly not the case. Like we've talked about
Yep.
this before. But after the debate, his statement was refuted by the National Border Patrol Council. And like within minutes of the debate, like they went and posted on X and said, quote, to be clear, we never have and never will endorse Biden, end quote.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, the guy lied so much throughout the whole entire thing. And the other thing I was worried about, just because I see what people are commenting on our TikTok, and there's two things for the anti-Trumpers, abortion and then January 6th. That's all
Yeah.
they have. So when January 6th came up, I was a little nervous because I'm like, okay, this could go really good or really bad. I thought Trump handled it very well. He brought up the recent news that we had talked about where Nancy Pelosi admitted that she was at fault for not having the National Guard there. And then at the end, Trump was flat out asked if he will condemn violence and accept the results of the election. And immediately, like before she finished asking the question, immediately he condemned violence. And I mean, he was like, of course I condemn violence. I've always condemned violence. And he brought up that he did condemn it on January 6th, both on Twitter, which they deleted, and in his speech earlier in the day. And then he talked about the election. He said, as far as that, he will accept the election results if it's a fair election. And he said there was so much fraud in 2020 and that he would be happy to have another news conference to talk about all the fraud. And then he said, we could even do another debate just on election fraud, and I'd be happy to show you all the evidence. And I was like, I thought the way he handled it was great because they keep trying to say there was no fraud. We all know. I watched the hearings. There were thousands of pieces of fraud. So I thought he did handle January 6th well. And then towards the end, he said he wasn't planning on running for president again. And the only reason he decided to run was because things got so bad with Biden. And he flat out said, the only reason I'm standing here is because he destroyed this country and I need to come back in and make America great again. And then he said, Biden is going to drive us into World War III. And he said it very like with a tone where everyone should be fucking scared as hell at that. And I thought that was a good thing to do.
Yeah, because that's already happening. Biden's already doing that.
Yep. And so after the debate, immediately after, I'm talking like seconds after it ended, the left went into full-blown freak out mode. So I'm just going to start with the clip from Jill Biden, okay? Because she went and like ushered him off stage, like literally pulling him off stage like he's a kid in trouble. And then I guess they went to some like after party where Jill Biden and Joe Biden are on stage. Just listen to this exchange real quick.
Job, you answered every question.
Can't hear it.
What did Trump do?
Cutting out.
Okay, that clip was probably hard to hear. But yeah, she is like, you did so good. You answered every question. You knew all the answers. And I'm like, this is like what a preschool teacher says when, you have a student that's like 4 years old. I mean, absolutely crazy. But I found my way onto Charlie Kirk from Turning Point USA. He was doing a live with like a whole bunch of people. They were pulling clips from all over the internet, all of the left-leaning media. So I'm going to just play like a few clips back to back so you can get a sense for what the left media was doing. And again, this is seconds after the debate ended.
Democrats is not like anything that I have heard in this campaign so far. And a lot of it has to do with, first of all, there was a deep frustration about Trump's lies. I mean, he lied a lot tonight. But the problem for Biden was that Trump was able to take sometimes incredible falsehoods and turn them into some kind of argument, whereas Biden's answers were, in a lot of cases, not coherent.
Some of those conversations include, should we go to the White House and ask the president to step aside? Other of the conversations are about, should prominent Democrats go public with that call because they feel this debate was so terrible.
And let's play another one here. Let's play cut 127. I've been in this for 30 years. So for those of you just tuning in right now, we are seeing the full force to pull Joe Biden. Play cut 127.
I'm just telling you, to Abby's point, I've been doing this for 30 something years, going on 40 years, and I have never, ever had what happened on this thing tonight happen in the middle of a debate. It started early and it continued. And to Van's point, Van made a very important point. These are people who love Joe Biden, who credit Joe Biden for kicking Donald Trump out of the White House. They're Democrats. The Democratic Party is a very diverse party. It fights about a lot of things. It has generational issues. It's had regional issues and everything else. The thing that unites the Democratic Party is trying to keep Donald Trump from getting back into the White House. They love Joe Biden for kicking him out. They don't want him back. They came into this debate nervous that Biden was in a weak position. They leave this debate
And I think
When you say conversations happening, what do you mean?
I think people are talking, I think the conversations range from whether he should be in this race tomorrow morning to what was wrong with him.
CNN just says Chris Wallace, quote, Biden just sunk his campaign tonight. Joy Reid just tweets out, there's a lot of panic going on right now. The cover of Huffington Post, by the way, this is the tell. There is no spin. Blake, I have not seen since Trump went down the golden escalator. I'll go to you, Tyler. Have you seen the media actually be gloves off towards their own? Have you seen this? I have not seen this.
So he brought up a really good point at the end, how they have never once called out Biden of all the gaffes that he's had, all the embarrassing senior moments, never. But seconds after the debate ends, they're all talking about replacing him. What's wrong with him? He's incoherent. This is terrible. Like it's bad. It's really bad for Biden.
Yeah, he is being ripped to shreds, not only by the right, but by the left. And, or at least I expected stuff from like the New York Post, where they're calling it political malpractice and national malpractice to let him continue being president. And the typical stuff with the right-wing outlets saying, he was disoriented and froze up and stumbled and mumbled, all the usual shit. And it's like, yeah, we expect this, but not from the left, because they always defend him, which, by the way, the White House is trying to use the excuse that Biden had a cold and that's why he didn't perform well last night. Like, okay. But you mentioned Mike Wallace. So I want to play the clip that Mike Wallace, he was having a conversation after the debate, and I want to play what he said.
Because he goes through 6 days of preparation at Camp David.
More than that.
And they know the
It was
rules.
more than a week.
Okay, so more than a week. They know the rules. He practices with the mics. He knows every one of these questions is coming. And yet he couldn't fill the time. Now, I just want to, let's see what the White House is saying. Sources close to the White House are saying he had a cold, wasn't feeling well. I mean, as you would expect, that came out early on in the debate. But what accounts for someone with so much experience doing so much preparation and this being the outcome?
Honestly, I think the question answers itself. He wasn't capable of doing any better than he did. He had
There's a world where he prepared to not go over the 2 minutes.
He was incapable tonight on the biggest of stages that he sought. He, in effect, dictated. And with all of that preparation, he was incapable of doing better than he was. And you can't come back from that. You can't be in a state where tens of millions of Americans watched you and come up empty. And that's what he did tonight.
Exactly. That's exactly what he did. And so I want to play one more clip, and this one is from Anderson Cooper, because they're both extremely leftist CNN reporters.
Yep.
So here's what Anderson Cooper had to say. He's interviewing Kamala.
Joe Biden was very clear. He will sign back into law the protections of Roe v. Wade.
The person we
These are
saw
big
tonight,
issues.
the president we saw
Substantive
tonight on that
issues.
stage, is that how he is every day?
The Joe Biden that I work with every day is someone who, as I have said, has performed in a way that has been about bringing people into the Oval Office, Republicans and Democrats, to compromise in a way that is extraordinary these days because it just doesn't happen, but Joe Biden can make it happen. The Joe Biden I see is someone who goes to our allies around the world and strengthens NATO to the point that there are 2 new members of NATO who just about 4 years ago, people said, is NATO even have a reason for existing? The Joe Biden I know is someone who has delivered 800,000 new manufacturing jobs and bringing manufacturing back to the United States, not shipping jobs out like Donald Trump did. So that's the Joe Biden I know.
Vice President Kamala Harris, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
He literally had to ask her, is that the Joe Biden you see every day? And I'm sorry, I can't stand Kamala, but her little 1 minute clip right there surpassed anything Biden said on that stage.
I was thinking the same thing. I thought, even though it's lies and bullshit, like at least she could articulate it. The entire hour and a half, Biden couldn't tell us one thing that he's accomplished. And
No.
I mean, he was like throwing like random things out, like childcare. I'm like, what the fuck have you done for childcare? Like nothing. I mean, it was so bad. And it's really bad when Kamala sounds better, like the more
Right.
coherent one, you know?
And that the beginning of that clip, I don't know if you heard it because it was it started playing right away. But do you notice the first thing she said was Joe Biden was very clear. Like, let me be
Yeah.
clear. Oh, okay. KJP.
Right? I know. And so when I was watching the Charlie Kirk show, they had like their whole panel and, they've got connections to the White House and everywhere in between. And one of the guys is like, okay, so I'm getting texts right now that Kamala Harris is convening an emergency meeting, closed door meeting. So like that's what's really probably happening. And this is the point where they are going to replace Biden. I mean, it's not, are they going to? They're going to. They can't. Mike Wallace, he can't come back from this. And so what I think is that they let him walk into this and fail. I mean, as I stated earlier, he did not seem jacked up on adrenaline like he was during the State of the Union. He wasn't prepared. No matter what they say, he worked for a week on it. He was not prepared. He couldn't answer any question. Maybe that was on purpose so that the whole world could see it and no one could deny it, that the guy has dementia, and now is their opportunity to bring in another candidate.
Yeah, because like Mike Wallace was saying in that clip, Biden literally spent a week at Camp David doing prep for the debates. There were 16 current and former aides that were helping him. Stephanie, it was so elaborate that they created a mock version of the debate stage in an old movie theater and an airplane hangar. And Biden's personal attorney, Bob Bauer, was playing the role of Trump. And all these White House officials were there. Like you had former chiefs of staff, you had National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, a bunch of Biden campaign officials, and they literally fucking coached him on every question that they thought was going to come up for a fucking week. Like, how can anyone use the argument that he was unprepared? It is not a lack of preparation. It's pure incapability. Like, and now we've reached the point where no amount of drugs or preparation is going to help this man be able to string a sentence together, much less memorize answers to pre-planned questions. I mean, how could we possibly expect him to produce a critical or independent thought?
Right.
It's insane.
Yeah, and the only thing that kept crossing my mind afterwards when I saw the left like immediately going at him, I thought there's no way that they are going to turn against Biden without being tipped off and getting the okay from the people that run all these media organizations, and I think ahead of time they knew like, okay, this is what's going down, and go ahead and speak the truth, which is basically a coup. That's what Charlie Kirk and them were saying. They're planning on getting rid of Biden and bringing in the backup. So what will likely happen is Biden's going to be forced to drop out, and then they'll pick someone at the DNC convention in Chicago. And maybe, just maybe, that's why they wanted this debate so early on in June. This is the earliest a debate has been between presidential candidates. So what are they going to do? Are they going to bring in Newsom? Like, I don't know. He held a whole press conference after the debate. And again, like, there's no way all of these people would be coming out on the left if they didn't get the okay ahead of time. Like, this was 100% planned. I mean, anyone that can't see that, it's like, come on. They've never called him out before for all the idiotic things he's done. And if the left is finally admitting that he's not capable of running and he's not coherent, then he shouldn't be capable of being president for the remainder of the year. Like, forget the election. He shouldn't be in there right now. It's a national security threat. And I don't know how they can, hide it anymore.
Yeah, well, this is where I think it's going to get interesting because, we've been saying all along that they're going to replace him. And I think this debate could very easily be a catalyst for that because Biden can't exactly be replaced at this point in the game legally, right? Because he won the primary. He's the nominated candidate. So unless he chooses to drop out of the race, they can't get rid of him. So the question is he going to do that? And by the word choose, I mean, will the elites coerce him into like calling it quits? Because Biden defended his performance last night. He told the press he thought he did well. He said he had no concerns. He gave the excuse that, quote, it's hard to debate a liar. The New York Times pointed out that he lied 26 times, he being Trump. And, I played that clip earlier where Kamala is like equally delusional about his performance. But if Biden does drop out of the race, then the DNC can decide on a new nominee at the convention in August, which means they still have another month to kind of like finagle his replacement. So I'm also wondering, like, did they do this and are they waiting because they're waiting to see who Trump picks as his VP before they decide on a course of action and who to put in Biden's place? Because I think that might also make a difference in how people vote, depending on who Trump's VP is. And even if Biden did drop out of the race, Kamala will not automatically be the nominee because she wasn't on any of the primary ballots. Only Biden was. So this technically gives the left a clear slate to pick an entirely new president and VP candidate in August at the DNC. All they have to do is hold a series of votes among the delegates until they get enough votes to nominate someone else. And it's happened before. This is exactly what they did back in 1968 when Lyndon B. Johnson was president and he was like totally unpopular with the people. So the Democrats were worried he couldn't win another term and they pressured him to step down, and he did. But then his replacement was Kennedy, who was assassinated. So then Johnson's VP, Hubert Humphrey, ran in his place and he got defeated by Nixon, which is how the Republicans ended up back in office. But here's another option.
And then Nixon, the whole thing with Nixon, this just makes me think like the CIA has been behind every presidential, candidate.
No doubt. No doubt. And then I was also reading something interesting in the Daily Mail, because if Biden drops out of the race after the DNC, then there's no need for a delegate vote. And the Democratic Party's main committee can just pick the nominee and avoid the voting process altogether, because under party rules, the DNC has the authority to choose a new candidate if either member of the ticket, either the president or the vice presidential nominee, withdraws or dies. So Kamala would not automatically become president, even if she was still in the VP spot. So there's a lot that can unfold here before the election. And you mentioned Newsom earlier. I still think he's trying to position himself to be the candidate, even though he's claiming that he totally supports Biden and he would never turn his back on Biden, which is what he emphasized in his press conference last night. But as my husband put it, he's waiting in the shadows, right? I mean, Newsom has been working hard behind the scenes for fucking months, if not years, to position himself for this opportunity. And we have talked about this for months, how he's been going on all these international trips representing the United States. He's been meeting with world leaders, doing shit the president should be doing, not the governor of a state that's being run into the ground. But Newsom is like the voice for leading the country in climate change measures and gun control. And despite the fact that his state is a complete shit show, Newsom talks a good game and he knows how to command a stage. I've said this before and I will say it again. I think he rivals Obama in charm as an orator and his ability to con people. And California residents, they have tried to recall Newsom several times. And he's still the fucking governor. Like, despite the fact that he's destroyed the state, he's still the fucking governor. And this man wants to be president. And this could very well be his opportunity to run if Biden, like, quote, drops out of the race, right? So even international sources are talking about this. And I want to play part of this clip from Sky News, which is an Australian newscast.
Element in the room and said that was Kamala Harris. Well, she wasn't in the room there, but you know who was in the building tonight? Was another third element. That's California Governor Gavin Newsom. And Gavin Newsom, I think, will be licking his chops at what he saw tonight, because he is an obvious next step if the Democrats decide to say, well, this guy's not going to work out for us. That debate was a disaster. I know for a fact that donors, big money donors, are already starting to get nervous about what they're seeing. So the question is, do we now see an internal Democrat Party civil war as a result of this?
Okay.
It's going to be Newsom.
Well, that's what I think.
Remember when he was like walking around the White House when Biden was gone and he was like acting like he owned the place? Like, I think they've probably had this set up for a while and they were waiting until it was way past the primary so that Americans can't vote on it. And he is the nephew of Nancy Pelosi. Like, he's got the inside scoop on the deep state. And Tucker Carlson did a whole talk on this before, because I guess he knows Newsom pretty well. And he said he thinks he's the most evil person he's ever met because he can lie without even flinching.
How many times have I called this man the Antichrist on our
Yeah.
show? I know I've
Mhm.
said it more than once.
Yep.
And like, I was reading that Democratic strategists are coming up with all these suggestions, right? There's Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, Colorado Governor Jared Polis, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. These are all possible contenders. But I was reading this morning, it's like 6-1 odds that it's going to be Newsom, and he's at the top of the list. And last night, when he said he'd never turn his back on Biden, he also said, quote, I don't know a Democrat in my party that would do so, especially after tonight. We have his back. We run, not the 90-yard dash. We are all in. We're going to double down in the next few months. We're going to win the election, end quote. You mean you're going to win the election, Herr Newsom? And I use that word, Herr Newsom. Like, if there is even an election to be won at this point, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, we could be in war. Like, who knows that we could have a cyber attack. There's all these hacks that are happening left and right. But at the end of the day, like, how are they going to explain that they're kicking out a Black female vice president and replacing her with a white male? Like, that goes against everything that the left, talks about. So I would love to see how they're going to handle that. Because it's not going to be a good look for them, but I don't think they care.
But again, since she was not on the primary ticket, how easy is it to bring in Newsom and still like keep her as the VP?
Yeah, true. Well, it'll be interesting. We'll have to come back to this episode if we're right, because I think it's got to be him. Hopefully, I hope it's him and not Michelle Obama, because I think that would be a whole other. Like, I think, there's a lot of people that would vote for her just because. So Newsom, I don't know.
Well, it's like Michelle Obama said she's not going to run, and Newsom said he's not going to run. And what do you want to?
I don't trust any of them. They're all liars.
Yep.
So yeah, this will be interesting. But I gotta say though, as far as the debate, like Trump handled himself very well, and I think there's going to be a lot of people out there that maybe they used to hate him because of what he used to do, like talking out of turn and making nasty comments, and he was very presidential in his responses. So
lately he's been fantastic. He just has to keep that up. Why couldn't he have done that like for the last few years?
yeah, I know, but he's doing it now, and hopefully people are seeing that. I think a lot of people tuned in, even my daughter, like her friends, 15-year-olds, they were all watching it. TikTok was like crashing because so many people were on there. So I think a lot of people saw it, and we'll keep everyone posted on what unfolds, because I'm sure a lot is going to be happening in the next few weeks with Biden. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll keep you posted, and we'll see you back here in a few days. If you're sick of all the crazy shit going on in our country and you want to express your support and patriotism for the show, head on over to our Etsy store at UO Patriot Chicks and check out our new stickers. The link can also be found on our website. If you love the show and you want exclusive episodes, support the podcast and join the conversation by becoming a member of our Patreon community. We'll be posting weekly member-only podcast episodes and content that isn't available on the weekly podcast. Every Patreon member will also get a free Unapologetically Outspoken sticker and updates about our new sticker release before they're made public. And be sure to follow us on TikTok at Unapologetically Outspoken. And if you haven't done so already, please rate and review the podcast. The more you support us, the more people we can reach. So help us spread the word.